Hi, my name is Rohit. Thanks for joining me on this journey. And today we're going to explore what is authentic yoga. What was the original intent and purpose of yoga, how it got distorted in the Western world, and how we can actually dive deeper into your practice and make it something that you can bring not only into something you do in the yoga studio, but into something you can do in every moment and every aspect of your life. For those of you that are critics, you're going to find this useful as well, because we're going to dive into some of the things, the myths that people have thought that yoga is about, and show you how yoga is actually a universal scientific process that is beneficial for everyone, for body, mind, spirit. Be back with you in just a moment. Hi, and welcome back. So today, as I said, we're going to explore authentic yoga. Now, for those of you that think that yoga is a system of exercise and of fitness and of feeling good, well, that's a tiny part of it. But that isn't the true meaning and purpose and intention behind yoga. Neither is yoga some kind of a Hindu religion with strange gods and beliefs. In fact, it goes quite the opposite. The intent and purpose of yoga was a scientific, spiritual practice to be able to discover the nature of reality, to be able to discover who we are, how we can best relate to each other, and to understand the source and origin and purpose of creation. Now, if some of you have wondered about these things, this is your time and moment to figure it out for yourself. Yoga's intent was not to preach to you or get you to believe in something, not to get you to become a follower of a particular set of ideals, but was for you to conduct a series of experiments upon yourself, the world around you, so that you may discover the presence of the energy of the divine or God that is within everything, within every atom of the creation, within yourself, within others, and is available for all of us to experience. Through that experience, we are able to actually fulfill the intention of most spiritual and religious teachers who talked about loving ourselves, our neighbors, the world around us, and God. Yoga is the scientific practice that helps us do this. Yoga became very popular in the 80s, and it spread rapidly in the Western world. And during that time, people began to think of it with all these notions of, exercise, flexibility, all that kind of stuff. But it got completely modified in the process from the original intent and purpose, which was actually to bring about a balance between body, mind, and spirit. Not just balance in our postures, not just balance in the asanas as they're called, but balance in body, mind, and spirit. It was a process that was meant to actually help us lead a better life. The range of physical, mental, and spiritual practices that were talked about in yoga originate from the ancient Vedic era in India, which is known to go back. Well, according to historians, they talk of about 1500 BCE, but according to spiritual teachers, they would say thousands of years before that. In fact, they could attribute yoga as the original concept of, or the teaching behind the creation of the universe. It was there as a guide system to help us live our lives. We were not just sent here with no manual or instruction manual to be able to live our lives. So to really understand yoga at a deeper level, we need to understand that it has very little to do with faith and everything to do with experience. The Western religions popularized the notion of faith as a way of understanding the divine or God. But the yogic system, which goes back thousands of years before the Abrahamic religions, talked about being able to experience this within yourself. Because see, the beauty of experience is that when I have tasted something, let's say I've been to a certain restaurant, or I've tasted a certain food, or I've seen a certain thing, I've seen a sunset. Now I no longer need to believe, is there such a thing as a sunset? Or is the ocean water salty? I don't need to believe. I have an experience, and so I know. I have a knowing. The idea of belief has caused a great deal of wars and conflict and disagreement all over the world. It has made it a question of us versus them, my religion versus your religion, and it has caused huge conflicts everywhere. But the system of yoga, because it was based on experience, and because that experience is universal, because when we experience the divine within ourselves and within the world, we will know that there is no difference between the experience I'm having and you're having, no difference between me and you, that at the core we are the same. And that idea is what makes yoga so powerful. The idea that there is a universal system that is beneficial for everyone to help us connect in a deeper way, love each other in a more authentic way, and discover the presence of God within ourselves, each other, and the world. So the Vedas, which this concept comes from, are recorded thousands of years ago. Originally, they were passed on by word of mouth and eventually were written somewhere around 3000 BCE, is what most spiritual teachers will tell us. And they were not meant to be scriptures. They were actually the writings of great saints and learned people who had practiced these things, experienced for themselves, and were now sharing it with the world. They talked about everything from dharma, which means your duties, the things you need to do in the world, also your occupation, stuff like that. Then artha, how to gain wealth, how to live a prosperous and abundant life. Kama, how to enjoy the senses, how to be able to enjoy your life. But ultimately, the goal of life was seen as moksha. Moksha meant liberation. Liberation is a huge concept in yoga. And it's not just about liberation from the world, as in many people think in terms of nirvana, which came later on in Buddhism, or in terms of heaven, as was talked about in most religions. But actually the idea of moksha was about liberation from the mind. Because when you are liberated from your mind, you become liberated from the world. Because you're free from your thoughts. They no longer control you. And when they no longer control you, then your emotions no longer control you. Then your circumstances no longer control you. And you are free. You are liberated. That is the idea. Now, yoga itself can be divided into many different paths. And the most prominent of these are the Hatha Yoga system, which is actually where most of the yoga that is practiced in the Western world originates from, though it's been modified. The processes have been massively modified and in many ways don't resemble the original poses and asanas as they were taught at that time. But that is Hatha Yoga, also known as Ashtanga Yoga. Then there was Gyana Yoga, which was more the philosophy of yoga, the philosophy of spirituality, which also has become very popular through many of our self-help teachings and many of the teachers who have come to the Western world, bringing these ideas here, modifying and adapting them to the Western world. Then there is Karma Yoga, which is how do you work in a state of connection with the divine? How do you work in a way that is deeply spiritual? That is Karma Yoga. And ultimately there is Bhakti Yoga, which is the yoga of devotion or love of God. How do you experience that love within yourself? How do you experience it within others? And ultimately that is the goal of all yoga, as pointed out by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about how that of all yogis, one who worships the divine or God is the greatest of all. So with that understanding, let's explore further. What did the word yoga actually mean? It meant union. Yes, union. Union is something we all long for. Now that most of us think in terms of union as a union with a partner. But union or oneness is something that all of us thrive on. And let me expand the concept a little further. Union happens when you are in connection with something. Now, connection is not only with a partner, but even with your friends. Connection is something that even happens when you're at work. You're working, you dive into your work, you enjoy your work, you're completely into what you're doing. That is union as well. Union can happen when you are in nature and you feel a sense of connection with the elements, whether you're a surfer, whether you're a biker, whether you are in any kind of sport, you're also experiencing a form of union. If you're a foodie, you're experiencing union. If you're an alcoholic, you're experiencing union. You're experiencing a union with the object that you are ingesting or with the activity that you are doing. or with the person that you're with. So union is really a very deep part of our lives. And in fact, it is the very thing that makes us like something. It's the very thing that makes us feel passionate about something, because union is about connection. And connection, when you dive deep into it, whether it's connecting with your food, or it's connecting with the drink, or connecting with a person, or with your work, that connection lifts you beyond your small, ordinary self. And that feeling of being uplifted is what we all crave. So yoga actually makes that into a scientific process where we can experience this union connection with the entire world, not just with a activity or an object. Yoga talks in terms about three different aspects of the divine. Brahman, which is the energy of the universe. We all understand today that the universe is energy. That term was Brahman. Brahman meant the presence of the divine in every atom of the creation. So as we learn, we have the ability to unlock that, and we learn to unlock it from within matter through meditation, through presence, through various processes like that, and we begin to experience the divine in the world around us. The next is being able to find that connection, that union with others. And that is the presence of Paramatma, the divine within each and every one of us. And as we find that connection, we begin to honor and respect each other. We begin to love each other in ways we have never done before. When I talk in terms of soul love and I talk of soul mates, it is about finding this divine presence within each other. And it is then that we're able to truly love each other, not with our minds, not with our egos, not with our lists of things that we like and don't like about people, or our emotions around that, but at a much deeper level. And then finally, the presence of Bhagavan, the presence of God, as an energy, as a light, or as a being, as many of us would like to have a relationship with. So it is about finding the divine in the world, in oneself and others, and in being able to become free of the mind, which actually is the obstacle to that connection. It all begins with the dissolution of the ego. Now, the ego is actually what controls the mind. It is your sense of self. It is your identity. It is who am I? And most of us identify with being this body, or with our intellect, or with our personality, or with our interests. We also identify with our society, our family, our friends, our community, our dog, our job, our work. The world actually works as a mirror in which we see ourselves. We see ourselves through our achievements. We see ourselves through the people around us. We see ourselves the way people think about us, or we try to read their minds, we try to figure it out. And then we end up comparing ourselves, thinking, I need to be like this person, I need to be better, I am worse, I'm not good enough, something is wrong with me. And through all of this come our psychological traumas. We are locked into our self-esteem, which is sometimes up and sometimes down. Our self-worth, our self-image can destroy us, or can turn us into narcissists. We can be very confident, we can have a lot of achievement, or not. And when we don't have it, when we feel less than, then at that time, it breaks us. But how about developing a deeper sense of who we are, a deeper identity that cannot be shaken? And that was the intent of yoga. It was to help you find a part of yourself that lies within every one of us, the soul, the Atma, that part of us that cannot be shaken by all the circumstances of life, that is by nature peaceful and happy and blissful, that is wise and confident in its own quiet way. And to just begin to experience that, I encourage you, take a deep breath right now, come into your body and feel that part of you. Almost everyone who goes in and discovers that the moment they're in their body and they're conscious of the breathing as your breath goes in and out, they realize they feel peaceful. Where is that peace coming from? That peace is coming from the Atma, the soul, the true self, that which you really are. So the whole purpose of yoga is actually to learn to connect with the true self and learn to live from that place. Otherwise, we run the risk of living in a world in which some people feel superior because they have more, and others might feel inferior. Those who feel superior might become fearful of loss. They might become narcissists or arrogant or selfish. And those who fail might feel marginalized, less than, depressed, may have low self-worth. We enter into a world of haves and have-nots. And this experiment has been going on now for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. It's been failing. It hasn't been working. 1% of people today own 50% of the wealth. 80% of us have only 15% of the wealth. This world has become so lopsided because we've tried everything we can to have as much as we can, and all the having in the world hasn't fulfilled us and made us happy. So the yogic worldview was this, that everything in the universe is energy, and all of that energy is spiritual energy. That same spiritual energy which is there in the light, which is there in God, is present here in a different vibration in this world. And that we have the ability to unlock that. We can unlock it through meditation, through presence, through mindfulness. These are all processes that are developed from the original Vedic thought. And as we unlock the energy of the universe, we begin to experience God in everything and everyone. We begin to experience what has been called in the Vedic system as self-realization or God realization. That realization is what gives us mukti or freedom. It is what Buddha called nirvana. From what? From the world, which in the Bhagavad Gita Krishna describes as being dukhalayam. Means a place of misery, of suffering. So Buddha also talked of the same thing, that the world was full of suffering. He wanted to help people get free of that suffering. Christ talked of the same thing, salvation, helping people get free of the misery of this world, and from the fact that what they desired could not be found here, the fulfillment of our desire could not be had within this world. In fact, our desires were very important tools that would drive us to seek happiness within the world, and when we would not find it, then the hope was that we would turn towards the divine. We would come to yoga. We would find a process that will help uplift us and ultimately become free from the desires that we have in our mind and from our senses, from struggle, from striving, from proving, and you will become free to be who you truly are. So that is the basic purpose of yoga, or some might call it enlightenment, awakening. It's a radical change in perspective. It's about living from the soul instead of from the mind. It is about becoming fearless instead of living in fear. It is about reaching that place when you realize that me as a spiritual being, I am imperishable. I am abundant, that nothing can harm or destroy me, not even death. Now, in yoga, the two main processes that were there, one was known as Advaita, which has become popular as Non-Duality, which is about the end goal of the yogic practice, is about merging with the divine, becoming one with God. And the other process is Bhakti. Bhakti means that you recognize that God is a being, someone who you can have a relationship with and have the greatest form of love, your ultimate soulmate. In fact, much of our desires for love and romance arise from that original relationship we have with the divine or God. So, in conclusion, I'd like to quote a verse from the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna where he says, "Of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself or herself, and renders loving service to me, is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all." So thank you so much for being part of this journey with me. If you've liked what I've spoken about, please subscribe to this channel and click on the notification bell so that I may keep you informed about all the different talks I'm having. I'm also going to have a series of webinars. You'll find links here on this page for my website where I'm counseling people and supporting them on this spiritual journey. And I look forward to hearing from you and for you being able to be part of this incredible exploration into the mysteries of life. Thank you.